Infrastructure is crumbling and the problems are only getting worse. The pressure to find solutions is hot. Let's talk about why American cities have no water, no electricity, and no money to fix their infrastructure problems. Welcome to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast, hosted by Chad Smeltzer.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Hot Seat. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today's guest is Patrick Shea, who is the General Manager at St. Paul Regional Water Services. Thanks for joining me, Patrick.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you. All right, I'm going to walk through your history. So you have a Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry through St. Cloud State University. You have a Master's degree in Public Administration through the University of South Dakota. You have numerous awards, 2014 Outstanding Leadership Award, Sustainable Procurement Leadership Award, the George W. Fuller Award, and the Leonard N. Thompson Award for Excellence. So, man, and you got certifications in Class A operators for water. You worked at the city of St. Cloud for 20 years. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot, man. So what made you want to get into public works?
Well, it's an interesting story, and I think it happens to a lot of us. You kind of fall into it a little bit. I think growing up, watching construction projects and large equipment is something that always catches a young person's eye. But in my bachelor work at St. Cloud State University, I happened to pick up a copy of the American Water Works Journal, and they said, lead and copper is a real thing, and it's something that utilities are going to have to grapple with. Again, just being a kind of a stupid 20-year-old college student, I read the article. I was looking for summer work, so it was in the spring semester. Reached out to City of St. Cloud's utility department to see if they had any opportunities, and I think just kind of having a very small understanding of the lead and copper rule kind of got me in the door.
Yeah.
They weren't necessarily looking for someone, but they had the resources to be able to hire. So I started my career dealing with the lead and copper rule back in the early 90s.
That's interesting because we're still dealing with lead now in the system. Yep. I'm sure we'll get into some of that conversation. But you were a lab technician. That's how you started with the city?
Yes. Yeah. So kind of an intern lab tech, and became a lab tech. Had that job for about 5 years and got the opportunity, was promoted to an assistant director role with the utility department. St. Cloud's utility department's a little bit unique. Water, drinking water, wastewater, kind of a regional wastewater aspect.
Yeah.
A little bit of renewable energy. And during my tenure there, we dived into stormwater as well, as that became a thing. So I went from a lab tech to an assistant director to a department director, and then they're organized in sections. So a typical public works director there is the public services director. So doing all things public works for since 2011 or so.
Yeah, this is great, man. You're the perfect example of someone that succeeds in public works and moves their way up and doesn't stay. You're constantly growing, right? I mean, that's what a lot of people strive for. So this is really exciting, and it looks like you're part of the Minnesota AWWA as well, correct?
Yeah, correct. Was elected as their incoming director. So the association is broke up into sections. Minnesota is an old section of AWWA. So I'll spend the next 3 years, starting in June, serving as our sections director to the National Association. So humbled by that. I mean, it's an election, by your colleagues, and it's a real honor to have that opportunity.
That's great, man. You're making a big difference in water for sure, and in Minnesota. So as a lab technician, what are some of the experiences you had? And as far as like going into utilities, like working as an operator with operators as a younger, person in their 20s, what are some of the experiences you worked with or dealt with?
That's a great question. I think one of the favorite parts that you don't really realize it when it's happening is the way the building was set up. The 24/7 operations was directly connected to what I call it the wet chemistry, the biological side of the operation. So constantly interfacing. Probably spend more time with an operator than you do with anyone else in the utility. And then from a lab standpoint, there's a lot of quality control when we install the water mains, or you get water quality issues. You have to work with your distribution group. So just a wide variety of opportunities to talk to all aspects of the utility, and really get to know the system. If an operator, it's a great job. It has a lot of, there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of variety. One of the things that operators don't always, a treatment plant operator don't always get, is they don't get to go on the corner of 22nd and Johnson and talk to the homeowner and explain what a hydrant does and those sorts of things. They're busy, making sure the water's coming in and going out at the highest quality, and they don't always get that opportunity. And that's something that I think is very valuable in just kind of understanding your customers.
Yeah, and that's I'm sure that helps you today, knowing what it's like, from that perspective, and at a leadership role now. That's got to be very valuable for you, I would assume.
Yeah, yes, I think one of the things that I bring to my role is working alongside people that were working rotating shifts and having to cover a 24/7 operation. I think a lot of people miss that when they're dealing with employee relations and compensation studies and all those kinds of things. That it's really great at Christmas when you wake up and get to spend time with your families, knowing that there's multiple people on both the clean water side and the drinking water side that don't get that opportunity, and see it as kind of their duty to do that.
Yeah.
And just understanding that that time with your family is so valuable, and they miss a lot of it, and that's something that we need to recognize and reward the best we can.
Yeah, that's great. I was going to get into challenges. Like, what are some of the challenges you're facing now? I know a lot of it's labor, and I'm sure you're going to talk about that, but what are some of the things with PFAS? You got lead, you got all these things that are coming at you as a leadership, position in your case. How do you deal with all that?
It's fascinating. Time flies when you're having fun, and I'm really having fun. So I had a long tenure in St. Cloud. Very proud of not just the work that we did, but the people there, and feel confident I left them better than I found it, and that's really a credit to the people that I got to work with. Now, coming into St. Paul Regional Water Services, drinking water focused utility. I came in 2019, joined a leadership team of 6. Of that group, there's one remaining person other than me, so that our whole leadership team is turned over due to retirement. So that's been both a challenge and an opportunity to kind of reevaluate what we're doing. But the real interesting part of it is, we didn't have lead service line replacements on our radar at all.
Yeah. To that of where the conversation was going is, you mentioned something that people were leaving as you were coming in. So that, I assume, was like what we call the baby boomer generation was retiring, and we're all moving in to fill in those positions now. How are you dealing with the labor shortages and stuff now?
So it's a very good question. So 2022 was particularly challenging. We weren't getting as many applicants as we had historically. We really struggled with kind of from promotion to getting jobs posted, getting people onboarded, getting them to stay. It was a real struggle, and I don't know what changed in 2023, but we've had a very, very successful year. So we're about 280 people here at St. Paul Regional Water Services. About 60 have been here less than a year, which gives you kind of a grip of really the tenure issue that we struggle with from time to time. 160 or so have been here less than 5 years.
Wow.
So that has really put a burden on the tenured folks to lead by example and be patient. So one of the onboarding discussions we have when we bring people in is, I challenge them to ask a lot of questions, because if they don't ask them, or the questions they have, probably the person to their left or right, or if not both, have the same question. They're just a little bit too timid to ask, or they haven't quite got the experience to know that it's something they should know, right? So I think asking a lot of questions is one of the things that we try to stress. But then just realizing those people that are 6 to 15 years, 6 to 20 year employees, there's a lot on their plates too, because somebody's got to pick up the slack and train people and kind of do that diplomatically, because we've all had a first day and we've all been new, and it's a great profession. You do a whole podcast on it, I think, as in an effort to promote people to get into this profession. It's a very fulfilling work, that you provide an essential service that's public safety, for fire protection, it's public health. As we learned through the pandemic, people need to wash their hands. They need a good source of drinking water to remain healthy. And then just public service. We're here to serve our communities and make our communities thrive.
That's good stuff. It sounds like you got a great culture going there with that many new people coming in. Wow, you really have to stay on top of that. Do you offer like coaching with them, or is it like a leadership? Anything you do with the leadership team to help keep things organized?
So with the big turnover, that's something we're trying to kind of struggle through. So in 2023, we're doing quarterly, supervisor trainings for people, and we haven't quite perfected or really put together a good mentoring program, but it's something that we're looking at, is just to try to connect every new person that comes in with somebody maybe in a different job, different division within the utility, to just, bounce questions off and just have that person show that they care by checking in on them regularly. And so kind of look in within our budget and within, procurement rules, like, can we host a lunch for mentors and new employees once a year, just so they can get an opportunity to sit down and have a meal together and just see how things are going. And I think it goes a long way. We hold a every other year all employee kind of recognition celebration, thank you, appreciation, all day training, kind of offsite. So we of course skipped that in 2021. So we just had that. So we brought in, 30 people in the beginning of March, and then we had that all staff employee appreciation event. And I hope things like that just show people that, if they're so inclined for the work, the culture here is there to meet that aspect of their job satisfaction.
That's awesome. That's going to really make a big difference with having those things in place to get everybody on the same page and flowing, effectively. One of the things that you mentioned, procurement, is always a hot topic everywhere with low bids, and I'm actually creating content about that right now. What are some of the challenges you're facing with procurement?
Well, I think it goes without saying, supply chains is a huge one. You try to bid out, a widget, and you think you're there, and you hit the street, and you're waiting for bids, only to find out that you don't get bidders, or there's no one can supply what you're asking for. I think we're not unique in that. Old enough to remember when your business management practice was, don't have a big inventory and just, order things as you need them, and kind of save space and save that cash in your reserve, where, we have a warehouse that was really designed back in the 90s. So we have space. So just getting ahead of things, once our budget is approved and authorized, hitting the ground running January 1st to kind of beat our colleagues in the profession to make sure, we need a curb stop. We have them we have them in stock. Having really good relationships with kind of the major vendors. So we can reach out to them at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. and say, this is an emergency. We need this piece of equipment. Probably the most creative thing we've done is our McCarran's project, which is rebuilding 2/3 of our facility. It's a progressive design build project, which is maybe a little bit more typical in bridges and airport runways and that sort of thing. But for a water plant project in Minnesota, it's unique, and it's progressive design build. So the same firm that is doing the design actually is the contractor that builds it. So you kind of, in 2019, we kind of moved forward with a a scoping effort where we invited design build firms to come in and see the project, what challenges would stop them from
Yeah.
bidding, what do they like about the project, what they don't like about the project. Is the timing right? Is our cost estimates okay? Is our procurement process going to fit the market? So a market sounding
Yeah.
exercise. And then we did kind of the onboarding of that whole process during COVID. So a lot of
Yeah.
this, right? Trying to get the look and feel of these people that are going to not only spend $250 million
Right.
of your customer's money, but build something that hopefully is in place 50 to 100 years
Yeah.
from now. So that process is, I would say we're about 25% through the construction
Nice.
of that. Again, and kind of a blank sheet of paper. I mean, really very simplistic. We need to rebuild. Here are structures we want to replace. We need to rebuild. We want a more modern, standard, smaller footprint operation. Let's work together with our operators, our engineering folks, our
Yeah.
procurement folks, our legal folks, and the design build firm, and let's get a great project that we can all be
Yeah,
proud of.
that's awesome. That's an example of what a lot of places need to do. It just saves so much time and hassle, and the communication's clear, so you're going to get a much more quality product at the end, right? I mean, that's the goal is to get the best built, just building you can possibly have, right? So yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
it's been a fun thing to be part of.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. I just know all the procurement side, and that's why I left where I was. I was like, man, procurement is a mess. We got to fix this. So I was all gung ho, built a software system, and then I'm like, okay, well, it's a lot bigger than I thought. So it's a lot more complex than what's actually going on out there. So it's good that you guys have a great process in place. Progressive design build. That sounds like an amazing best value solution that you have. So. I think a lot of people could learn from that, and maybe that's another conversation we have for another day. But so as you're going through these procurement process and you're building out this new water treatment facility, right? That's what it is, right? Okay.
Yep.
When PFAS and all this lead stuff's coming out, how are you going to be able to change the way your processes of treating water, or what's that going to look like in the future as you try and get to like 4 parts per trillion, for some of this stuff that's going on?
Yeah, that fits very well into kind of the scoping document that we
Okay.
did. We're 100% surface water. We have entirely redundant backup groundwater system. So our supply side, our source water side of this operation, really developed in the early 1900s. It is amazing. I mean, we really have kind of 3 sources of water as a source water or surface water utility that's pretty
Yeah.
unique, and really kind of peace of mind. We can weather a lot of storms with those systems, but the challenge with kind of having it all kind of filtered into one spot is we have a very nice campus here, so we have space, but again, we don't, we pump at the river, and the rest is gravity. And so we don't repump within this campus. And as you know, electricity is a huge part of what we do. So it's more than just maintaining the pumps. It's just adding 20-30% to your operating budget because you're having to
Yeah.
repump 40 million gallons over and over again. So the new plant, one of the goals was to try to recapture some of that elevation change, and downsize our campus a little, not our campus, but our building footprint, to be able to plug in the next tool that would be put before us. Right now, our source water is in really pretty good condition as it relates to PFAS and the 4 parts per trillion. We're well below the standard for that. Our hope is, that the more we learn about PFAS and the more we learn about source control, keeping it out of the waste stream so it doesn't reach the river and reach our lakes, that will stay at that level. And we're actually a very good alternative for other, we're a regional utility. We're a very good alternative for some of the other communities that aren't customers of ours
Yeah.
right now. If they're looking for either a short or a long-term solution to addressing both capacity, because groundwater challenges are in Minnesota as well, but capacity or quality. We're a good alternate for them if they're so
Yeah,
inclined.
I probably messed this up because I'm still learning, but I guess at the wastewater treatment plant they would have the restrictions more than the water side, especially if you're pulling straight from a lake or whatever.
Right. Well, a little bit of both
Is it?
because
Okay, I
we're
wasn't sure all the regulations and rules yet, so I'm still learning.
yeah, it just so happens that like Minneapolis, us, St. Cloud, for those contaminants, it's just not it. It's an issue because today's standard will be cut in half and then cut in
Right.
half again, probably within my lifetime, maybe not my working career, but my
Yeah.
lifetime, and that's a good thing. That's what we're here for, and that's what that's the public aspect, the public health aspect of what we do. But the PFAS issues in Minnesota are really closer related to the storage of chemicals, byproducts, since the 40s, 50s, 60s, and so it's in the
Yeah.
groundwater
Okay.
in this area, and so those groundwater systems are the ones that are really seeing
Got it.
those higher levels, and that's why we're a good alternative for them, because instead of them taking water out of the ground, they can hook up to us. We can provide them water. Now they're not worrying about groundwater challenges for capacity and addressing the
Yeah.
PFAS issues. So
Interesting. That's good to know. I'm always learning every day something new. So this is perfect. so so what
yeah,
are some of the things that you're active in AWWA? You're obviously very progressive. You love to get things done. It seems like what are some of your passions like that you want to do in the future?
that is
It's a
that's
loaded
a
question.
you know yeah, I started off with you kind of fall into it,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of things just happen. Right now, on the work standpoint, we're trying to replace 25% of our
Okay.
service lines, because of lead, um, and so I spend a lot of time on the funding aspect
Okay.
of that. This is infrastructure that is not publicly owned; it's owned by the homeowner, and it's very hard to get a homeowner to spend six to $20,000 to replace their service line when they can buy bottled water, they can buy a lead pitcher that filters out lead. They're past a child having young children in the house, so they're like, I've been drinking this for 40 years, so I'm fine. I'm not going to spend $20,000 to upgrade my system. So we've launched a 10-year program, and within about 14 months, we're doing them on a large scale right now. We have a 10-year program that we're kind of in our first year. So just looking at the calendar and looking at the opportunities that are here at St. Paul Regional Water, getting our new plant up and running, and having it produce not just the same quality water, but even higher
Yeah.
quality water, and then getting the lead service line replacements kind of behind us, I think would be a real something that
Yeah.
you'd leave your work career and feel like, well, that was
Yeah.
really good. So from a family aspect, I have a great supporting family that just can't spend enough time with
Right.
your kids and your spouse and your dogs and all those things. So trying to weigh the work life balance is always something that's um, it is always a wise thing to consider, but also just I have a very supporting spouse that I don't deserve. And she
That's
knows it, and
awesome.
I know it, and she knows
Yeah,
I know it. So
that's great. Yeah, it's good stuff, man.
yeah,
I mean, look, spending time with family is so valuable nowadays that I don't know what's switched since COVID, but that seems to be the trend. Like a lot of things have just changed where we don't have to do the grind every day of like, we have to have a work life balance or you just get drained so fast and you get burned out, in these careers that we try and maintain for decades, in some situations, it's just tough sometimes. So that's great. When you're talking about service lines with lead, and you mentioned about that's private, right? But there's been conversations of, and you're talking about lead replacement. Are you talking about going in and replacing the homeowner's lines now because of it being identified as having a lead connection of some sort? Okay.
Exactly. So, the way St. Paul's ownership is laid out is the utility. So the public side of it runs from the water main to the property line. So there's a connection at the water main. It there's a curb stop valve to do shut off kind of within that range, and then there's the
Right.
property line, and then from the property line into the house to the meter is owned by the private is a privately owned asset. So we can't nor should we be able to, in my opinion, I can't charge you know one neighbor for water consumption, take that money and spend it on the private infrastructure. It just there's a lot of issues, but legally we can't do that in
Okay.
Minnesota, which I think is a great thing. So we have to try to figure out if we're truly going to reach the goal of a complete replacement. Where do we find that money? And as a regional entity, we serve multiple cities, but the city of St. Paul itself dedicated $16 million of their American Rescue Plan allocation that they could have chose to spend on many things. So our board and staff at SPRWS worked very hard to lobby for, hey, this is a good public works project. It's a good jobs program. It's a public health issue. It really kind of checked all the boxes that the city of St. Paul had as a goal, and that's the money we're spending right now on the private side. The process is both simple and a little bit more complicated in Minnesota than it would be in Florida. We're 8 to 10 feet in the ground, so you need a stretch box when you do this work. Try to do it as non-invasive as possible, but there's no way around it. It's a 3-hole process. There's a 3x3 hole in the floor in the basement of the property owner's house, so cut into the concrete. There's a 3x3 hole at the curb stop, and then there's an even bigger one at the water main. And right now we're doing multiple methods. Some pulling it out, some pushing a new line in. Multiple methods, but 3 holes. A crew of 4 to 5 can get maybe 2 done a day. So do 26,000 that we need to do. We can do 2 a day with the crew. And so it's deep, and we get frost and we get winter here. So really from April till Thanksgiving is kind of that window that we have. So it's really admirable and exciting when you hear New Jersey did it all in 30 months, right? Nothing's impossible, but people complain about construction traffic and all that. And for us to do it in 30 months, we would be everywhere. Every street would be dug up, to try to address the problem. So we're limited in how much we can do based on the weather. The depth and the weather really creates those challenges.
No, it's great insight, and thank you for describing that, because that really cleared things up. One thing that I've heard from other like vendors and things like that, talking about this lead issue, is homeowners that have faucets that have lead in the faucets and stuff. Maybe you replace the whole lead, their line, and no more lead on your side of things, but now they have faucets that have lead in them. What do you think about that?
That'll be, we started with lead paint, and then we, now we're on to, hopefully we can get that addressed, because it's really, call it the least vulnerable. It's developing brains. So, 5 years old and younger that are really affected, and they're the ones that get lead paint in their mouth, right? Because they're chewing on stuff. And the same thing goes with, with water. The amount of water a toddler drinks per weight, per pound of themselves is considerably more if you ever kind of break that out. So they're consuming a lot more of our product. And so they're more susceptible to lead in the drinking water. So on the fixture side, one of the lead and copper rule, and something that we've done historically at SPRWS is, once we do the work, then we'll provide 3 to 6 months worth of filtration, a pitcher and a filter and instructions on use this for a while, because we've disturbed their internal plumbing, and there's a possibility even with copper to have some deposits of lead within their own system. So letting them know, do good flushes, don't drink out of the hot water tap, don't cook with the hot water tap, do all those kind of things that, we need to do a good job of educating. But then we'll do a post testing option for them. So we'll drop off water bottles for them and give them a package that can collect a sample and mail it in, and get to know what the results are. And then if there is more hits, if there's concerns at that point, then the education on the fixture kind of comes in. But a lot of it's as simple as cleaning out your aerator, right? I mean, that's where a lot of the deposits. It's not either from the faucet itself or the service line historically. They're getting harder to take off now. Yeah. So YouTube is your friend if you're trying to take off an aerator off of a new faucet. But that's just that will be kind of as we mentioned, the standard will be cut in half, and then it'll be cut in half again. That'll be kind of the next challenge, is just to let people know that that's something they should keep an eye on. And at the sale of housing, maybe there's opportunities there that the fixtures have to be of a certain composition and that kind of thing. But that I think that gets a little bit out of what the utility does, but I think we can be the source of the testing and the information about what your water comes in contact. You might want to pay a little bit more attention.
That's great examples. Yeah. I mean, that's the conversation that's going on, is the faucets. Once we fix everything else, it's potentially for the faucets and stuff. So it's good to know that there's, a plan and kind of in place that you envision. So if we got a couple more minutes, want to wrap this up. Tell me one of your most favorite stories.
Oh,
it's kind of a loaded. I hit you with it just random. So sorry about that. I didn't prep you for that one. So I was just curious if you had any good stories.
Interesting. I think, yeah, you got me. I think there's one project in particular, and I'll go to the wastewater side, that really proud of that we did, and because it was a series of small steps and small efforts that led to something grand. So in St. Cloud, they're recovering phosphorus from the waste stream, and phosphorus is a essential nutrient that we need to grow food. Our bodies need it to live, and it gets a bad rap because it's contributing nutrient to impairment of lakes. And so when people in the environmental field hear phosphorus, they have kind of a negative connotation. But it's a nutrient that we need, and it is something that we can run out of if we're not careful, because matter is not destroyed; it's just parked somewhere else. So, and it was a partnership with the state of Minnesota and with the Clean Water Fund. Minnesota is blessed with a percentage of their sales tax going for clean water activities to deal with impairment. So they started kind of an innovation grant, the Pollution Control Agency. St. Cloud, we got that grant, and we did some piloting on this technology. The pilot showed that it worked, but it's kind of a small grant. And in the process of doing that, the public and the legislature started to look at the Clean Water Fund and said, well, we want more implementation dollars. We want to spend more of this money on the ground projects that people can see and feel and understand, and less studies, less data, less, 3-ring binders on a shelf. So the PCA started a point source implementation grant within that time frame, and phosphorus is an impairment. St. Cloud is discharging phosphorus to the Mississippi River through its wastewater plant. We got a large grant to install a phosphorus recovery facility, and this is and the rewarding part of that whole process was that this took a decade. From start to finish, and it's based in science, but it's an art. It's a recipe that you need to tweak, and you need to do all those things. A lot of these things are well outside, both my skill set or my level of attention. But just working with so many great people from the state, from the engineering firms, from the procurement folks to the vendors, to the chemists, to the operators, to the interns we needed to hire. It was just, and it's really something that, resource recovery facilities, I think is something that we should all hope for, that our waste is just really a reused product that people can benefit from, and reduce, recycle, reuse. Right, it's the reuse part that's huge. So I think just projects like that are what kind of helps you get up in the morning and know that what you're doing today might not seem really impactful and really meaningful, but it takes small steps to really get to the finish line, and that was one of the examples of projects that was particularly rewarding.
Yeah, the organization that you had, like you said, it's been over a decade of putting it all together. It's a ton of work to try and get the money to get these systems put in place so that you can like you said, just keep phosphorus available, right? I mean, it's a valuable nutrient that we can use in so many different ways. So,
and they're selling.
And they're selling, and they're making they kind of ROI, right? We're getting some ROI back. That's even better. So, wow, it's a great accomplishment. Kudos to you for being a part of that and leading that, and great leadership on all fronts. You're doing a great job in St. Paul and making a big difference. So. If there's a way people can get a hold of you, Patrick, what's the best way? Don't give out your cell phone number because that's a bad idea.
I think you can find me on LinkedIn, Patrick Shea, Shea. Email anytime, patrick.shea@stpaul.gov. But anytime. Always looking for options to network and to hear other people's good ideas, or bounce off ideas if they're having challenges, and just seeing what we can all do together. If there's one thing I like to stress to as many people as I can, this job feeds my family. I'm living a great life. I'm blessed beyond belief, and that's because I picked up a journal, because I was avoiding studying for a final in college, and here I am. With a lot of cool stories to fall back on. That's great,
man. You're a leader, born leader, and making a big difference. So thank you for joining me here on the podcast. It's been great.
All right. No, thank you for what you do. It's a great start to your podcast, and hopefully it keeps rolling for you.
So far, so good. I appreciate it, and thank you so much for joining me.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you for listening to the Infrastructure Hot Seat Podcast. We hope that this show brought you some insight on relevant topics within the infrastructure world. Please join us every 2 weeks on Tuesday for the next episode. If you're interested in being a guest on this podcast, please set up a 15-minute interview with your host at calendly.com/Chad Smeltzer.